Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough, and welcome to Off the Cuffs. I'm very excited today to have with me my childhood friend, the resident Superior Court Judge, Judge L.Todd Burke, here with me today at Off the Cuffs. Got a chance to talk with him before we got started, and I'm excited to have him here this evening. So, Judge, you know, a lot of people know who you are, but a lot of people don't know who you are. Tell us about who is Judge Burke. I mean, I know you went to, a house in Morehouse, a house in Morgan, someplace like that, but tell us about you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Sheriff, for inviting me to participate and appear on Off the Cuff. But you're going to upset a lot of persons when you don't get Morehouse correct.
I apologize. Morehouse, excuse me.
No. But I am Todd Burke, and lifelong resident of the city of Winston-Salem, educated public schools here in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. Left here to go to college, Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. Immediately thereafter, I went to North Carolina Central University School of Law, and I was blessed to pass the bar exam, one try at it, and I was a prosecutor in the eastern part of North Carolina initially, Kinston, Goldsboro, and then I came to back home to the city of Winston-Salem, County of Forsyth, and I was a prosecutor for almost 4 years here. And later I went into private practice, had my own law firm, and for the past 25 years I've been a Superior Court judge and had the honor and privilege of being the senior resident Superior Court judge for a little over 2 years now.
Wow. Well, like I said, I've known you all my life, and you've always been an impressive young man, impressive middle-aged man now. Your career has always been impeccable. Like I said, I've known you all of my life, basically. I watch you practice law in the district attorney's office. I watch you practice law as a private attorney. I've seen you on a bench. But, you know, a lot of people don't really know who Judge Burke is. They see you, it's like a mystique, you know, they see you coming and going. But a lot of people don't know you have such a great sense of humor. You're a part-time comedian at times. What's it like sitting on the bench as a senior resident judge? What's that like rendering decisions that affect people every day?
Well, first, Sheriff, I want to commend persons like yourself. You have a very public persona as the sheriff of a county. You are the chief law enforcement officer out on the streets of a county. Your jurisdiction extends the entire county throughout. And you're out to make public appearances for persons, and people know who the high sheriff is in a county. I would like to enjoy more anonymity, but this is my home, and persons know my parents because both of them were educators, and people may know my parents from being in public office, but really a lot of young persons that they taught. So many persons know them through those avenues when they were educators. But when you're sitting on the bench as a judge, you ought to have an attitude that you're there to level the playing fields. You are to apply the law. You should have a thought process that when you see any given situation, what is the right decision? What is the right thing to do? And when you come to a conclusion in your mind, what is the right thing to do, is there law to support that? Can you find law to support that? And sometimes what you may think is the right thing to do, you honestly believe that is morally based, it may conflict with what the law is. And you're torn then. And are you to follow the law, or are you to create law? Well, as a trial judge, you should be following the law. You shouldn't be creating new law. That's left to the legislative bodies and to the appellate courts when they interpret new laws, whether there will be a new law made. But sometimes trial judges do make decisions that create new law, and some facts dictate that they do so. But I try to adopt the attitude as a judge to do what is fair for all and make a decision that can be followed and that other persons will want to follow, and make people who come to court feel like nothing was done to strip their dignity away, that they were heard, that someone listened to them, that someone took the time and patience to hear what they had to say.
But how do you know what I've always wondered, and I tell you this all the time, how do you sit sometime and render decisions when the playing field is so unlevel? There are so many things that happen every day that, I know, and this whole society know that. So when someone comes into the courtroom, how do you remove emotions from that? I mean, me, myself, I haven't mastered that. Sometimes I let my emotions get the best of me. And you and I have talked, and you tell me sometimes, you can't say that, Bob. You can't do that. And I applaud you for being that collective with it. But how do you sit sometimes and maintain that composure minus the compassion? How do you channel that energy sometimes?
You just are to do your best to take the personalities out of the equation.
Yeah.
That as a private practicing attorney, a lot of times what I did, I had to remind myself that if things don't go the way I want, it's not happening to me. It's indirectly happening to me,
right,
but it's actually happening to my client. But if I'm sitting there representing someone and I'm a ball of nerves thinking about what bad thing could potentially happen to my client, how am I going to be collected? How am I going to do the job at hand, the task at hand, to zealously represent my client and achieve the best result for my client? You have to be focused, and you can't let your emotions cloud your legal intuitive skills and do what is needed for your client to survive the legal challenge that's before them. So you just have to kind of compartmentalize things.
Mm-hmm.
But as a judge, you remind yourself that these are persons, these are people. And there are things that bother me that I see. I may not show it, but it does. I've seen persons do horrible things to children, things that are repugnant and disgusting, too so to describe. And it does bother me. I see these little children and able to tell their story of such horrors that have happened to them, and you say, these are some of the bravest people I know. And it bothers you when you see innocent children taken advantage of. So my emotions are there, but I just try not to show it, because you're not human if you see some of these things happen. You must not be if these things that are happening to other persons, and they have to be hurt.
I applaud you. You and I bump heads sometime, and we always remain the best of boys. I look back sometimes and I think about, especially in recent times, thinking about your mother. I spoke about her yesterday, and your father. Your father was one of the best dressed men outside of myself that I could think of, always dapper. So I saw a picture, matter of fact, of you and your parents yesterday. Someone had an article that they gave me. Childhood friend of ours gave me yesterday. But when I look back at that, and you as a grown man now carrying your own, I mean, you had some giants of parents. How did that, affect you? Like, to say, oh, I'm Logan's son, I'm Mrs. Burke's son, growing up like that. Did that bother you?
I would rather, and what a blessing it would be, to have them here and you ask them, how does it affect them to have a giant of a son? When you're a child, you take things for granted. It's your normal.
Right.
I went to the school, a lot of persons, they know my mother and they saw her later in my parents' adult lives. But my father was the one who was out front early on, whether it was because he was president of ESR, the board of directors for ESR, that's the Experiment in Self-Reliance, or as an educator. He started at Carver High School when Carver was, I think it was K through 12, or at least
you
first
went to
through
Carver
12.
too.
I did. It was 9th and 10th grade.
Right, when we
The
came
school
through.
system was set up differently then, but there were a lot of students at that school for it just to be 2 years. In any event, he was the athletic director. He coached, and then he later became an assistant principal at Lawrence, and he became the principal at the time of Carver Crest. But he asked that the name be changed to the late Lafayette A. Cook, and the school is now known as L.A. Cook Elementary School. So, but I went to that school where my father was the principal for 2 years in the 5th and 6th grade. He'll tease my mom sometimes, and he would say he would tell her, those 2 years that Todd was there, those were the 2 most difficult years I had. To the point that I said, Dad, you got paid today, and he's probably looking at me like, how does he know I got paid today?
Yeah.
But in any event, to see my father work at that school and serve in a leadership role, that's humbling. It's exciting for a child. Your father's the principal. Your father's in charge. So I tried to be sensitive of that and conduct myself as a model student, but I was a boy, and I tried myself, and I did have the experience of visiting him at the office. It was not the most pleasant experience for me, but in any event, it made me proud to see my father there. But sometimes, as I said, you take these things for granted because you don't know anything different. I can give you an example. I grew up in a neighborhood, and a couple of young ladies, their father was a doctor, a dentist, and they'd have a birthday party. We live on the east side of town. There was a place called Skate Haven on the west side of town.
Oh, yeah.
Their parents would have a chartered bus or 2 chartered buses to fill all these children with to drive out. I'm not talking about an activity bus. I mean a chartered bus that looked like a Trailways or Greyhound bus. But you don't know anything different, and you think that's normal. But as you get older, you understand that was the exception. That was not the general rule. But what my father did is he made sure that I was exposed to different lifestyle. When I played, I went to the Patterson Avenue YMCA. I didn't go to the Central Y. I played football at the boys' club.
Red Shields, that's right.
You and we were there together. I didn't play football.
I often wonder, how did you end up in Red Shields?
Because my father wanted me to be exposed to not thinking that everyone lives the same way that I live. And it made me humble. I would like to think that I am as down to earth as the next person, but that's my perception of myself.
Right.
Ultimately, the perception is how others view you. But my father, I think he did a good job of exposing me to different people with different backgrounds, and going to school in the community called Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Those 2 years with him where L.A. Cook was located. Going to the Patterson Avenue Y, which later became Winston Lake Y, on a regular basis, playing Little League football at the Salvation Army Boys Club, located on what was then Claremont Avenue, is now Martin Luther King Jr., and that building is now, the name has been changed. It's a new facility there now. That exposed me. But children were different then, and they were still... everyone maybe came from different backgrounds, but there was still a certain wholesome tone and attitude about the persons you encountered.
Have you seen a lot of change or differences? So you've been senior resident Superior Court judge for 2 years. You've been practicing law, I know, for 20, 30 years now?
Since 1986.
Yeah, that's a long time. So my question is this: have you seen a lot of change in the criminal justice system? Have you seen a lot of change in the crimes, the people? Have they gotten younger?
The thing that I see was already going on when I graduated from law school, and started in the criminal judicial system. You saw more of it around 1988, and that was how crack cocaine base, which is on the streets or commonly known as crack. But cocaine base is cocaine that is cooked with another substance, perhaps baking soda, and is turned into a hard substance like a rock, and people can smoke that to obtain a high. It's not as expensive as buying powder cocaine, but that cocaine epidemic obliterated generations. And it was such an addictive high, and it was a way that allowed persons, perhaps without certain moral turpitude, to make so much money that it just seems as if that changed society a lot at that time, as it just seemed it was anything goes.
Yeah.
For people who were subjected, communities who were subjected to that, children who were left at home while a parent may be out trying to get that last high. Homes that, you even shared with me in your investigations where child complained of, what's wrong with this child? And because they noticed that the child smelled a certain way, so they did a home visit. There were extension cords on either side of the house leading to neighbors' homes so that the house could have power, and there was the plumbing had been turned off in that home. But persons during that time, it just seems like a lot of souls were lost. And it's like we're trying to find our way back from that still, what that did to so many families and tore so many families apart. But the violence that I observed during that crack epidemic, it was like no other. To see on the streets of Mayberry, USA, for example.
So, you and I were raised in the same period of time. So now we both have families, have kids. So when I raise as I'm raising my boys now, I try to do things differently than what my parents did raising me. I try now to make it difficult for them. I try to make life better for them than what I was to me. But along the way, I try to have them earn some things. And I think that by trying to adopt parenting styles, so the question I'm asking you, so when you have two kids, you have Melissa and you have Logan. So raising your kids now, looking back, all that you were exposed to, all the things that you may have had in life, when you raise your kids now and all that's out there now, it's a different world, what do you say? How do you guide or how do you deal with your kids now? From the same premise that your parents gave you, or do you try to take the good, the bad, and mix it all up and give them your own perception?
Well, obviously my children are young adults. Both of them graduated from college. But the way I look at the responsibility of having children, it matters not what you accomplish if you have not raised your children in a manner and instilled something in them or provided an opportunity so that they can succeed. You can be measured by what you've been accomplished, but you could also be measured or not be measured by how you raised your children. And when it comes to children, there's no more valuable thing that you can do than the time that you spend with your children, the valuable time that you spend, quality time that you spend with your children. You cannot replace that. You cannot go back later and try to get that time. You can try, but it's nothing like that being present through all stages of a child's life, through their matriculation. And if you're doing that in a positive way, and they're seeing you and you're leading them by example, you can't help and think that that time spent has impacted them in a way that they will lead positive lives. And, of course, you share life lessons with them along the way. but just that time with a child. And you have sons, you cannot, the excitement that child has when you're doing something with them, it's such a fulfilling sensation. I mean, it could be a school project. I remember one time I was reading a book with my son, and it seems like every hour. So what page are you on now, Dad? What page are you on?
Yeah.
I mean, he was just so excited. We were working on this book report together, and he wanted to know how fast I was reading the book. It could be looking at a video when you come home from work, playing a game with them. But just that time you spend with them is simply invaluable.
You know, I was sitting here thinking, man, looking at you, and I've seen you in different seasons of your life. And this is probably, you probably say this is probably the most mature, the most, what I would call that self-actualization that Maslow talked about that I've seen in you. I mean, it's like you got this about you. And, you know, I look at you and I look at life sometimes, and, you know, we never know what life is going to bring and how it's going to spin us or what it holds. And so this part of your life that you're in now, you've practiced law, you've was ADA, private practice, you the judge. What's next for you? You know how we go through seasons in our life, phases in our life. What's next for L.T. Burke?
I'm not going to say what I'm not going to do, and I'm not necessarily going to say what I am going to do. I really enjoy what I do. In the present, obviously, we're all battling with this coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic crisis that we're in. And as you are probably aware, June 1st, the Chief Justice has stated that we will begin a soft opening of courts. Courts are suspended right now. The judicial system is suspended except for certain emergency circumstances. So I'm focused on that right now, along with other stakeholders, trying to reopen courts in a way that it will not only be safe to the public, but it's going to be safe to those who work, who are right there on the front lines, who work in the judicial system, whether it's that clerk that takes the money that you may pay to file a lawsuit or to pay a fine, the prosecutor that you may talk to about your case, the support staff of the various offices that work in the building, whether it's juvenile, the district attorney's office, the various judges' offices. So we're trying to do as much as we can to protect everyone, whether it's the public or those persons. So my attention is focused on that right now, more so than it is how much longer I'm going to work. Am I going to retire, or am I going to consider some other elected office? Maybe I run for sheriff.
Hey, you know what? Can you hold off for about another term?
No.
Let me get another term in for you.
I'm just teasing. I support our sheriff here in Forsyth County. He's doing an excellent job, and I'm full of pride to see someone that I've grown up with as a child. And he is. On the day that you were sworn in, there was so much emphasis put on the fact that you were the first black sheriff elected to Forsyth County. But I have talked to you about your cases when you were a fire marshal. I have talked to you on the phone when you were a DEA agent. I've talked to you when you were waiting to board a flight when you were a U.S. flight marshal. I've talked to you with your experiences abroad as a DEA agent. So when I look at Sheriff Bobby F. Kimbrough, I see a superb law enforcement officer who just happens to be black. That's what I take away from.
You know, it's two memories that I have. Right, I'm gonna share. Right, when I go back memory lane. So, you remember when you used to take me down to Allen Edmonds? You turned me on to Allen Edmonds shoes, right?
Yes.
And it was a time in my life when I couldn't afford Allen Edmonds like you could, right?
I couldn't either. That's why we were going to the. That's why we were going to the discount store.
No, you were the 88 in. You were 88 in, right? I wasn't making near the money you was. And you took me down to Allen Edmonds, right, in Burlington. And I said, $100 and something for a pair of shoes, right? But you know what? I couldn't let you know that I couldn't afford to buy them shoes. So I bought them shoes, man. Did you know buying them shoes, I had to go without for about 2 weeks, man, buying them shoes. And I'll never forget that. You turned me on to the Allen Edmonds. You was the first time I went out to, went to California?
Yes.
You was the first person I ever went to California with, right? And then your mother spoke about this when the Mayor Pro Tem spoke at the swearing-in ceremony. She talked about the time when I lived with you all for a minute, right? We got to talk about that offline. We'll discuss that. But I appreciate you letting me rest my head there for a minute. You and your family, right?
Yeah, like it was my home.
Yeah, you did. You did. You know. Yeah, come on. You can stay here.
Yeah. I said, Mom, you may not know this, but Bob's staying.
He living in the basement.
Staying down there.
He living downstairs, right?
I know somebody else is there. Yeah, she's
that's
never
what
going.
Good friends do, right?
Exactly.
That's right. You treated it just like it was your house. Come on, my boy, right now he needs somewhere to lay his head.
Treated you like you were family. I knew you would do the same thing for me.
Exactly. So look, I got a question for you as we get ready to go. If you had to, there are many persons that are going to watch this, young men and young girls. What advice would you give them? Because, I meet so many people every day when I move around this county, and it's almost like there's a generation that is lost. There's a generation that we're missing. We're not mentoring to. We're not saying, hey, what advice would you give somebody, young or old, right now? They're saying, I want to be a judge one day. I want to do this. What are some of the keys that you, in life, that regardless of what you're trying to do, have to be present for success?
Well, sometimes I like to say that people may think that they or feel they're a lot smarter than they are because everything you can Google,
right?
Just about all the information you want.
Pretty much.
It's a great resource. So whatever you desire to be, whatever your station is in life, don't let that be a roadblock to whatever your goal is. Do as much as you can to learn about the profession that you are aspiring. And then seek out persons who are members of that profession and talk to them. See how they were able to go. Some persons, my father, when I went to law school, he asked me, did I notice anything about law school when I was there the first week, orientation week. And I was saying, well, that's a pretty diverse student body at North Carolina Central. He said, that's not what I'm talking about. So I said, well, there are some older students, and that's what he was talking about.
Right.
That he was trying to impress upon me what a blessing it was for me to be able to go straight from college to law school. I did not have to wait, did not have to work, try to raise some money and be able to afford. That opportunity was there for me. So it doesn't matter that you cannot go directly. Everyone's path sometimes is different. It's not the same. But you can achieve that goal. It may not be when you want, but you can achieve that goal. Everyone says who prescribe to the Christian faith, he's an on-time God. So whenever you make it, it's going to be what's on time for you. But learn as much as you can. Seek out information from persons who've gone before you. And when people see that you're trying to make something of yourself, when you are a positive person, you just never know where that help may come from. But if you don't try and you take a defeatist attitude to begin with, then you're never going to accomplish your goal. So you have to aim high. And if you don't make it, you still have achieved something greater than where you started.
You remember when you talked about on-time God, I kind of had a thought in my head when you were tutoring me when I went down to law school, and they sent me back home. You remember that?
You didn't need me to tutor you.
I needed something because I didn't. They sent me back home, right?
The thing with you in law school, you have
with my own time, yeah.
And the thing about it not being your time, you have never had an opportunity to go to law school when that was the only thing you had to focus upon. Law school requires sole attention.
Yeah. The torts you was trying to teach me when I was in the torts class.
We were talking about a torts class that you were taking you were in a summer program that was introducing you to what law school was about.
Yeah.
So when I was in law school, there were some persons in my class that were in their early 60s. They may have been a little older than that.
Really?
So
there's hope for me, Judge?
It definitely is.
Okay,
definitely is. But you going to law school is only because that's a personal goal of yours.
It is.
A lot of persons look at your station in life and they would probably ask, well, why do you want to go to law school? But like I said,
I failed at it the first time. That's why. And I don't like failing. I've got to go make that right. At some point in my life, that is actually on my bucket list.
All right.
Just so I can say I went back and I completed it. But I want you to know, man, how much I appreciate you coming by. The Honorable Mrs. Burke and your father did an awesome job with you, man. You're a hell of a man.
Well, thank you. And I thank God for them.
You're an asset to this community. You're an asset to the bench. Glad to have you as my partner, my fraternity brother, and a lot of other things. Love you. Anytime you need us, come back and sit and talk with us. I've enjoyed this. I could go on for hours, man, telling stories about.
Well, we are once we turn the cameras off.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, some of the conversations that we've been in and some of the things we've done. But I want you to know, man, it's a pleasure having you here. As always, I'm going to give you the last word. Anything you want to say before we go?
Well, Sheriff, I want to say that I love you too, and thank you for inviting me to be on your show, and thank you for doing what you're doing in our community to make the citizens of Forsyth County safe. When I see you in this position of sheriff, you are conducting yourself in a way that all citizens are embracing the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office Department, and I hope that they continue to do so, because you're definitely carrying yourself in a way in which they feel comfortable and want to embrace the sheriff. So thank you again, and I look forward to continue to serve in my capacity as judge and working with you as a stakeholder here in Forsyth County.
Appreciate that. This was Bobby Kimbrough and the Honorable Judge Burke with Off the Cuffs. As always, I love you, this city, this county, this state, and this country. May God continue to smile upon you. Thank you.